Hi, this is Jason from Effective Dashboards, helping maintenance and reliability professionals get the most out of Power BI. So welcome back to another video. In this video, it's going to be a case study on creating a KPI matrix using the Power KPI Matrix visual. Okay, so before we get started, let's look at what we're going to end up with at the end of this case study. So we're going to end up with this matrix here, which you can see has got a list of different KPIs, all grouped by different aspects. We're going to create this conditional formatting. This can allow us to see if the current performance is on target or off target. We're going to get the current value. We've got the threshold here, which is the target. We've got a bit of a difference here, and we've got a sparkling. So I'm going to show you how you create this using the Power KPI Matrix. Okay, so we're going to go through three sections. The first one is going to be a bit of an introduction, and we're going to cover what the balanced scorecard actually is. So I'll go through that, and we'll talk about why I've come up with the list of KPIs that I've selected. The second part is going to be importing data. So we're going to look at three or four different types or different structures of data and how you would import it into the your data model to get it just in the right format that we need to be able to use this Power KPI Matrix visual. And then finally, we're going to go through and we're going to set up all the configuration options so that you've got this visual, and we can talk through the different options that you can use when setting it up. Okay, so a quick word on the balanced scorecard. So it is actually a concept that was created by a couple of guys called Kaplan and Norton back in the 90s. And it is something that a lot of companies have used and have had a lot of success with. So we're going to use that as our principle here for selecting the KPIs. One of the key aspects of this is that they're linking the KPIs that we've selected to four different aspects of your business that, generally speaking, if you're performing well in those aspects, you're going to be performing well as a business. So we're going to look at finance, which is the domain of the investor. So are you getting a return on your investment, and how's your financials looking? We're going to look at the customer, so the end product of the service. We're going to look at internal processes, so how do we manage our internal processes? And then we're going to look at learning and growth. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose KPIs that are related to each of these aspects that are also related to maintenance. So the maintenance aspects of finance, the maintenance aspects of what we deliver the customer, the internal maintenance management or work management processes, and then finally we're going to look at some learning and growth within the maintenance department of the organisation. So that's going to be the approach. In terms of looking at the KPIs, so the balanced scorecard is really one of the key principles here is linking the vision to the strategic objectives and then filtering those down into each of the different departments. So what I've said here is for finance, the key here is to increase our profits, reduce our costs, while also increasing the return on investment and generating cash. So that strategic objective, as it was really a company strategic objective, but what we're asking ourselves here is how does the maintenance department feed into that strategic objective? So for those, we've got production losses due to equipment failures. Okay, so if a piece of equipment fails and you're unable to produce, or your production, whatever that might be, it could be oil and gas, it could be a manufacturing plant that's producing microchips, but if the production stops or is curtailed or the quality reduces, then that's an impact on our business, an impact on our revenue. The maintenance cost per unit of production, so how much or what percentage or proportion of the total unit, the cost to produce one unit is related to maintenance. The cost of breakdown maintenance, so if anything is breakdown maintenance, and what we're talking about here is anything that is an unplanned breakdown. So some strategies will be just to let a piece of equipment fail. We're not talking about those, we're talking about the cost of any breakdowns which we've determined should have been preventable or prevented. And then finally, we're looking at our budgeted versus actual maintenance costs. So there could be other ones. I've just selected these for just now, and they would give you a pretty good feel for the financials as far as maintenance was concerned. The next section is looking at our customer. So from a maintenance department point of view, our end customer is really operations, and what we're providing them is equipment availability. Okay, so we've put here this percentage availability of critical equipment, and I've just left it with that one goal there, or one deliverable to the end customer. In terms of internal processes, we've got quite a lot of different internal processes within the maintenance department. So I've selected a few KPIs here. We've got the number of work orders that are waiting to be approved. We've got a critical backlog. We've got our preventative maintenance compliance. So are we complying with our preventative maintenance strategies and work? We've got a schedule compliance. So are we able to create a schedule and then execute that schedule efficiently and effectively? And then we've got the break-in, so are we managing any break-ins to that schedule? And then finally our tool time, so how much productivity are we able to get from our workforce? And how many barriers, and it's all about reducing the barriers to getting work done and making sure that everything's in place so that somebody can pick up a work order and go and execute that work with little interference as possible. So that, again, there's probably more, but that's going to be a good starting point. And then finally, learning and growth. We've got employee engagement and feedback, and that would be an HR function to kind of canvass the employees and are they engaged and what sort of feedback are they providing in terms of their experience working for the company. And then finally, we've got the percentage compliance with the maintenance and operations competency matrix. So each technician, supervisor, everyone that works within maintenance or within the maintenance and operations organisation has got a matrix, and it's got a list of competencies. So are we compliant with those? And that'll go up and down as people come and leave the organisation. So those are the KPIs we're going to be looking at for the creation of this balanced scorecard matrix. Okay, so next we're going to talk about data and how we are going to get the data into our data model, and then we're going to build our visualization. So for each of the different KPIs, I've tried to simulate some of the situations that you might find yourself in when you're trying to pull all the data together. So in fact, let me just go a couple of slides ahead here. So to be able to get the data into, or shape the data into a format that the KPI matrix needs, we need to get all the data looking like this, which is a date, the name of the KPI, so this is what we're called row-based KPI data, so the name of the KPI, and that name will be dependent on the KPI. I've only got one here, but if it's critical backlog, it'll say critical backlog here, for example. The value on that particular day and the target on that particular day. So we need to get the data in one table looking like this. Okay. So at the moment, we've got our KPI data in different structures. And the reason I've done this is to basically simulate some of the challenges that you might face when you're trying to pull this information together. So the first one we've got is that we've got a table, and in this table here, we've got, for any one date, and this date represents the week. We've got the equipment losses on that week, and we've got the target for that week. Okay, so that's this one here. The second type of data that we've got is what I've called aggregated row-based data by month. So in this one here, we've got the data by month, and how much it costs per barrel in terms of the maintenance cost per barrel in that month, and then we've got a target. And then we've got transaction data by day. So this is more akin to the type of information you would see in a database table. So in here we've got a key to make this a unique entry. We've got a date, we've got a tag, which is the location or the piece of equipment, and we've got a record of its availability in that date. So that one is 100%, and we've got a target as well. And then finally, we've got this what I've called an aggregated matrix based data by week. Okay, so this one here is typically the type of format that you would store data if you were just going to create an Excel dashboard. Okay, now basically we've got a column for every week. We've got a load of different values. We've got a target in here, and we've got a list of different KPIs, and they're all grouped as well. So this is typically how you would. This is an easy format for somebody to enter data, because it's logical for us when we're entering data to think about each month has been a column, or each week has been a column, and just to plug these values in. And these values are probably pulled together by running different reports in different systems, and it's quite manumatic. Okay, so that's the four different types of data that we're going to be using, and we're going to pull that all into our data model, and we're going to mash it together, and we're going to get one table that's going to be just exactly what we need. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly talk you through the data model that we're going to use. So these are all of the different sources of data that that's going to have the information that we're going to use to generate the KPIs. So what we're going to do is we're going to take each one of these and we're going to carry out a transformation on the data using Power Query, and we're going to get each one of these looking like this. Okay, we're going to get it set up so that there's a KPI value for every day, and we're going to have the reference to the actual KPI as a KPI name as a column, okay, as well as a value within a column. And then we're going to get the target. Okay, so that's what we're going to do with each one of those. Once we've done that, we're going to get that all appended into a single table, which is going to be called this one here, Scorecard KPIs. We're also going to create a KPI definitions table. So that's going to be a table that's going to show us an entry for each of our different KPIs, and we're going to use that for a number of different things that we'll cover. Sorting the KPIs in an order that we want to sort them in is going to be one, and some other aspects. So that's going to be linked into this KPI scorecard, and we're also going to link a dates table. Okay, so I've got another video on a dates table. I'll leave a link in the description, but we're going to get a table that's got a continuous range of dates that we're going to link into this KPI scores table as well. So this is going to be this KPI scorecard KPIs table is going to be a table that we're going to use for most of the information that we're going to put into the matrix. Okay, so next we're going to pull the data into Power BI using Power Query. So what I've done is I've just added in an image here from the presentation slides with a list of the KPIs, and we're just going to use this to help us keep track of where we are, and we'll delete it afterwards. So we're just going to work from top to bottom. So underneath the financial section here, we've got production losses. So let's start with that one. And we've got losses due to equipment failures. Is the name of the file there. So I'm going to select that file there. Okay, so we can see this is reasonably close to what we need. However, the only thing that we don't have here is that we need this to be a value within a column, a KPI name column, rather than a column in its own right. So let's go and we'll do a little bit of transformation here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a column, and we're going to call it a custom column, and this is going to be called KPI name. And this column here is going to be called losses due to equipment failures. Now, there probably is some sort of function that you can use to go and do this automatically, but just to keep it really straightforward and simple, we're just going to type that in. So losses due to equipment failures, and we're going to go and we're just going to insert that there. Okay, and then I'm going to pull it across the side here, and I'm going to change that type to be text. Okay, so now we've got a date, which is date. We've got this, which is the KPI name. We've got the actual value here. Okay, so I'm going to change that. I'm just going to double click on here. I'm going to change that to be value. And then we've got target. Okay, now this value here needs to be rounded to something a bit more sensible than about 8 decimal places here. So let's go in and we'll use this rounding, and we're just going to round it to 2 decimal places. Well, not what I wanted to do there. Remove that. Transform in here. I think it was because I was on this add column here. I must have added a new column. So in here I'm going to put 2. Yeah, that's what I wanted. Okay, so first one done. So we'll go back to home and then we'll close and apply. Right, so the next one is aggregated by month, and that's going to be fairly straightforward as well. So let's go in and we're going to find our cost data. Now this cost data has got 3 sheets in it. Okay, so let's find the first one here, which is maintenance cost per unit of production, cost per BBL. So that's that one there. And in here, well, first of all, we can see we've got a load of null values in there, so let's get rid of those. So we are going to remove rows, and we're going to remove the blank rows. So let's tidy that up. And it's by week, it's by month here. That's completely fine. The KPI matrix will automatically find the most recent value, and it will automatically build out a trend using this this data here. So there's no need to convert those into weeks. We can leave them as months. That's fine. It will mean, however, that the most recent value will be the value at the end of a month rather than the value at the end of the most recent week. Okay, but that's fine for us at this point in time. So let's go in and we'll add in a column here. And we need to call this exactly the same. So remember, we're trying to get all of the columns in exactly the same. We're going to eventually append all of these tables into one consolidated table, so the column names need to be identical. So we'll call this KPI name, and this one is going to be called cost per BBL. We'll pull that across to there. Change this one to value. Okay, so we've got value, we've got target, and we've got this KPI name, and we're just going to change the type of that to be text. Okay, so if we go in and just take stock here, we've got date, we've got KPI name, we've got value, we've got target. That's the cost per barrel. And then if we go to this other one, we've got date, we've got KPI name, we've got value, we've got target. Okay, so next we're going to look at the cost of breakdown maintenance. So that's more or less exactly the same as the previous steps. So we've got cost of breakdown maintenance here. Okay, so that is the cost of breakdown maintenance. Okay, so let's look at the next one here, which is budget versus actual cost. So in this one here, we're going to carry out a couple of extra calculations because we want this to be represented as a percentage difference between the budget and the actual cost. So let me just go through those steps there. So we're going to go and find this cost versus budget sheet here. And we can see this data is slightly different in that rather than having a value, we've got a couple of different values here. We've got the date, we've got the total maintenance cost for that week, we've got the budget for that period, and we've got the actual target. Now that target is actually a variance. Okay, so we essentially want that to be, now it's a variance as a percentage. So 0.1 means 10%. So we want the variance to be less than 10%. So let us start off by adding in another column here. So this column here is going to be the difference. So we're going to call this total versus budget difference. And this is going to be, we're going to start off with the total cost. And we're going to subtract the budget. Okay, so it's going to give us the difference between the total cost and the budget. So in this example here, we were 401 pounds, we'll call that, below the actual budget for that period. Okay. So next we need to calculate that as a percentage of the budget. So we'll add another column, budget versus actual diff %. Okay, we'll call it that. We can rename it later on if we need to. And in this one here, we're going to take the difference, so that was the total versus budget difference, and we're going to divide it by the original budget for period. Okay, and the final thing we can do is we can transform that into a percentage, and we can also transform the target into a percentage. So let's go into here, and we can see both of these are percentages. So once we've done that, what we can do is then delete this one here. So we can remove that column, and we can remove this column because we don't need them. Okay, and we can actually remove this maintenance cost column as well. It's just the difference we need. So then we need to add another one here, custom column, and that's going to be called the KPI name. And we'll call this one cost. Stick across here. So we've got the cost. Now this here needs to actually be called value. And we've got the target. Okay, so we've got a KPI name, and that also needs to be a different type. And let's go in here. We'll get that as a text. Okay, so that one's got a fair few steps there. Okay, so we've gone through it, and we can see now we've got the date, the KPI name, the value. Now this one's a percentage, but that's fine. The visual is able to cope with percentages and actual numerical values. And then we've got the target as well. So that is all we need to do for that one. So that has now completed the first section here, which is our finance KPIs. They're all imported into the data model. So next, let's move on to the availability of critical equipment. Okay, so next we're going to add in the availability data, the percentage availability of critical equipment. So let's go and find that information from here. There it is. So this data is structured in a different format to the previous examples, and you'll see that this data is actually in a format you would expect to find in a database table. Okay, so we've got a transaction for every day rather than the values summarized up to a weekly level. So we can see here we've got the availability key, so that's a unique key for this table here. We've got the date, we've got a tag, so on a particular day, and each one of these is a day, you'll see here. This tag here, tag 1, and we can see there's plenty of other tags in here, has an availability of, for example, 1, and the target on that day was 0.96. Okay, so that's a percentage essentially, but we've just represented it as a number for just now. Okay, so we need to summarize that data into a format that we can use, and we talked about before, which is basically a date, a KPI name, a value, and a target. So let's start off by adding a column for the week end date. Okay, so we need to find out what the week end date for each of these dates is. So and that'll be the first summarization that we'll use, the column we'll use to summarize the information. So let's go to add column, custom column, and we'll call this week end date, and we'll use this one called date dot end of week. There we go, end of week. Okay, so I added date in twice there. Now we want to find the end of the week, the date at the end of the week for the date field that we have in our table. Okay, and 2 just forces that to be a Monday, brings back the Monday of that week. Okay, click OK there, and we can see here we've got that date there. So it's not a date just now, so we need to change that to be a date. So let's go to here and change that to be date. Okay, so let's go in and we can go to, I think it's home, yeah, here, group by. We're going to use this group by feature here. And we're going to group by weekend date. I'm going to go to this advanced. Actually, I probably don't need, yeah, I do need to because I want to add a number of columns. Okay, so we also want to add in a value and a target. So to get the value and the target, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to take the average of each one of these targets for the week and the average availability for the week. Okay, so we'll call the value, and we're going to call that the average of the availability. Okay, now I've pressed it too quickly, but you can see it's aggregated that as an average for each of these week numbers here. So these are now weeks. I need to go back in and change it, so I'm going to double click on this cog here, and I'm going to go to advanced because I need to add another one, which is for the target, and that is going to be the average of the target for the week. Okay, it's probably not technically correct to do it this way, but I just want to go through the process so you've got this idea in your head about how you would aggregate data to get it into the right shape for feeding into this KPI matrix visualization. So yep, we've got that now, and here we go. We've got a week, so we'll call that, we'll change that to be just called date, because remember we need it to be date, KPI name, which we're going to add in a second, value and target. That's the 4 columns that we need this to be shaped in. So let's go and add another column here, and we're going to call this one KPI name, and this one is going to be called critical equipment percentage availability. Okay, there we go. We've got this in the format we need. Now I think we just need to move this over to there to be the second column, and a quick transformation of this to be text. Okay, so that is us. Finally, we want to change these to be actually percentages. So let's go and we'll change this to be a percentage. And we'll change this one here to be a percentage as well. Okay, great. So this can all get handled. The visualization, the Power KPI visualization, or Power KPI Matrix visualization can handle different KPIs, and some that are formatted as percentages, and some that are formatted as whole numbers, some that are formatted as decimal numbers. That can all be handled in the matrix, and we're going to cover that when we go to that configuration stage. Okay, but for now, let's just close this one down, and we'll import this in, and then we'll move on to the next one. Okay, so next we're going to collect all of this information here that's related to internal processes. So these are all the maintenance work management process KPIs. So just to let you see, the setup here is that we've got this, we've already got a dashboard that the maintenance department are keeping up to date. And we can see here this is, it's not necessarily in a format that's in a table with column names, with neat headers and rows. So there's a dashboard here, there's an input sheet here, which has got a list of the different KPIs grouped by different parts of the process. Now we don't need all of this information, but all of the information we need is in here. So we're going to use Power Query to go and actually pull this information and just extract exactly what we need out of here and get it shaped up into the format that we need to feed our matrix. Okay, so let's close this down. We're going to go into Get Data, and we're going to go to our sheet here, which is the Maintenance Work Management KPI sheet. And I'm going to go into this one here, the input sheet, which we just looked at, and we're going to go to Transform Data. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get rid of or promote these headers here. Yeah, we're going to promote these headers here because we want each of the columns for just now to be a date. Okay, so use first row's header. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is the week number we don't need, and the fact that it's a maintenance KPI, that's just a column header, we don't need that anyway either. So let's go and remove top rows, and we're going to remove the top 2 rows. Okay, so that is that done. So the next thing we've got is, well, these look like they are the KPIs. So let's go and double click in here and we'll change this to KPI name. It's not, this has got a lot more than we need here, but this is going to be all the KPIs. This is going to contain the information that we want to extract for our subset of KPIs. So that's fine. We've got a target here, which is good. And then we've got the dates along here. So the next thing I want to do is I want to delete any blank rows. So there's a function here, remove rows and remove blank rows. Okay, so that's tidied up all of the blank rows. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go and unpivot this data. Okay, but we want to unpivot the data with the KPI name and the KPI target. So I'm going to select both of these and I'm going to go to transform and I'm going to go to unpivot columns and unpivot other columns. So we want to unpivot each one of these columns. Okay, so now we can see that this data is starting to look a lot more like the data that we need to feed for our requirements. So we've got a KPI name, we've got a target, we've got an attribute which we're going to change to be the date, and we've got a value. Now that value is currently undefined, so we need to just change that value to be a decimal number. Okay, and we can probably round it as well. Oh, that was incorrect. Now, if you want to undo something like that, you just get rid of the steps outside here. Because I did not want to change that, I wanted to change this one. Data type, and we'll call this a decimal number, and we're going to round it to 2 decimal places. Okay, so that's fine, but we don't need, so basically what we've got is for every entry, for every measure that was in that spreadsheet, we've now got an entry with a target for the date, for the value, so it's almost what we need. So what we'll do first of all is let's shift some of these around. Date, KPI name, value, then target, that's the order we need them in. And we don't need everything in here, okay, so we only need a certain subsection of these. Start getting, so tool time, preventive maintenance, break-in work, preventive maintenance compliance, schedule compliance, HSC critical work order count is what we need, and we also need work orders waiting approval, which is here, and we need tool time. Okay, so I think those are the KPIs we need. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so let's just double check that's the case. Work orders waiting approval, critical backlog, preventive maintenance compliance schedule. Yeah, that's exactly it. Okay, so we've got the ones we need now. So let's go and apply the changes. Okay, so a little bit of an extra piece there for you if you've got information, which is quite common if you're collecting information by running separate reports and consolidating it into like an Excel-based KPI tracking tool or KPI dashboard. That is quite a common format that you'll find. So that unpivot function gets it unpivoted and gets it into this row-based KPI format that we need for this particular application. Okay, so finally we need to get the employee engagement or the HR data. So that's all held. The employee engagement and the percentage compliance with the competency matrix is all held in an HR KPI sheet, which is in exactly the same format, aggregated matrix based. So it's exactly the same format as the previous one here. Okay, so we just need to use that unpivot feature again. So let's go and get the HR data for this sheet here. And here it is here. So the first thing we do is go to use the first row as a header, and then we'll change this one here and we'll call it KPI name, and then we're going to remove the blank rows. Okay, then we've got a target here, so we select the first 2 columns, and then we go to transform, and then we go to unpivot all columns, and here we can see we've got this information here. So we've got the KPI name, we've got the target, that's fine, we've got this attribute which is going to be called date, or renamed to date, and we've got this one here which is value, which we are going to leave as value but change to it could be a whole number, this one here. I think, let's just double check, actually no, it can be a decimal, so let's change this to a decimal. So let's go in here and we'll call this a decimal number, and then we change this one to a date. Okay, so we've got date, we've got the KPI name, we've got the value, and we've got the target. So that is it. So that is all the information we need pulled into our data model in terms of the KPI information. So next we're going to go and create a KPI definition table. Okay, so a quick summary on where we are so far. So we can see along the top here we've got each of the different sheets that we've now pulled into our data model, and each one we've had to carry out some subtly different, sometimes drastically different transformations to get all of these tables looking like this. Okay, a date column, a KPI, a value, and a target. Okay, so we've now done that for each one of those. So we've now almost at the point where we can create this scorecard KPIs table. However, one final thing we need to do is we need to go and create this KPI definitions table. So this is just going to be a table that's going to give us a list of our KPIs and which category or which aspect, balanced scorecard aspect, they belong to. And we're also going to put in some numbers here that's going to allow us to custom sort the categories and the KPIs. Okay, so let's just crack on with that. So to get the KPI definitions table, we're going to go to Excel, and we're going to click on the Excel spreadsheet that's got this KPIs definitions, and we'll go to the definitions sheet and transform data. Okay, so there's very little transformation needs here. We just need to, each of these is fine, we just need to get rid of these rows, these blank rows. So remove blank rows, and we can see here we've got five different fields. We've got the KPI name, so that's going to be the link through to each of the individual KPIs. We've got a threshold status, which is going to be used later on when we are calculating the KPI index, so I'll explain what that is for later on. And then we've got the sort for the category. Okay, so we've got a balanced scorecard category here: finance, customer, internal processes, and learning and growth. So this is a mapping between the finance KPIs, the customer KPIs, the internal process KPIs, but also this is a sort that we're going to use when we display these categories within the Power KPI Matrix visualization. And then in here we've got a KPI number, so that's going to sort the KPIs within each of the different categories. So we'll just click on the import data here, and that will create a new table that we can use later on when we create our data model relationships. Okay, so we're now in a position to go and pull together all of the different KPI tables into a consolidated KPI table. So let's go to transform data, and I'm going to select a table here, start off with this one, and I'm going to go to append queries, and we're going to select this option here, append queries as new. And I'm going to select this option here where it's 3 or more tables that we want to append. So equipment losses is already in there, but let's add the other ones in. So just double click on each one just to pull it across. We don't need the KPI definitions or the date table, they're not in the same format, so they're for something else. And once we've done that, let's click on OK. Okay doke. Now I can see one thing's worked well, which is that all of these values here, all of the actual individual tables will have had a date, a KPI name, a value, and a target. If one of them was different, then you would get another additional column here. So say I'd spelled targets, you get one here called targets. So that's good. However, one of the things that's not so good is that one of the fields must not be a date field, okay, because this has been defaulted into this field here, which is basically saying I'm not sure what it is. I'm gonna make it a kind of a general type field. So I'm gonna have to go and have a quick look to see which of those tables I've forgot to format the date field as an actual date. Okay, so I can see I've opened up this work management input sheet, and I can see here, like, this date is not formatted as a date, so I need to go and change this type here from text to date, and then I need to close it. Okay, and I'm just going to check to see if there are any other ones. I'm just going to double check each one, which is probably something I should have done anyway. So I'll pause it, and then I will come back if we need to change any of those. Okay, so everything looks okay, and we're going to go and go back into our, in fact, how's it here? This append, and edit query. And now we can see it's defaulted it as a date, okay, because every source table has got the date field formatted as a date, so it's automatically detected it as a date field here. Now I just need to change this type, this here, and we'll call that KPI Scorecard KPIs as the query name, and I think that is us. Let's just close this and apply it. So we've now got that one table that's got all of our information consolidated in one place. It's called the KPI Scorecard KPIs. Here's it here. Okay, we've got the date, we've got the time, we've got the KPI name, we've got the value, and we've got the target. You can see all that information is there. So that is great. So next we need to go and create the data model, or create the connections in the data model. So we're going to go into the modeling tab, and I'm going to make this a bit neater. Okay, so I've opened up the modeling tab here, and we can see that we've got each of the different sheets here, and there's they've automatically tried to detect a relationship with this KPI's definitions here. So let's see what they've okay, on the KPI name. Okay, so we don't want that connection. These are just there to actually pull the data in and get it all shaped up. So we need to go and delete each one of these connections here. Okay, just by right clicking on it and then clicking delete. Okay, so once I've done that, we are left with this one here, which, if we just double click on it, has got the KPI name and the KPI name between the definitions and the scorecard, which we do want. Okay, so we want to keep that one. And it's a one-to-many relationship because we've got one entry in the KPI's definition, but that'll be repeated many times in the scorecard here, the scorecard table. We also want to create a connection between this date table date and the date in here. We'll have one date here that refers to many entries here because there's going to be an entry for each week for each KPI. Okay, so these other tables here, they're pretty much redundant now. They were just in to pull the information in to begin with, shape it up, like I say, and then we end up appending it all into this table here. So that's the important table there. We don't need to manage the relationships between multiple tables. We've got it all in one table there. Okay, so that is the modeling side of things complete. Okay, so that's sections 1 and 2 complete. In section 1, we talked about what a balanced scorecard is, and we looked at the list of KPIs for maintenance that I would recommend would be considered suitable for a balanced scorecard in each of the different scorecard aspects. We then looked at each of the data sources, and we had 4 different types. We had data that was summarized by week, with data that was summarized by month, with data that was in a database table format, and with data that was in like a matrix format. So we went through examples of how to transform that data and get each of those into a consistent format that we could then use to append into one table, and that'll be the table we'll use to store all our KPI information, which we'll use when we build out our KPI Power Matrix. Okay, so thanks for watching, and in the next video we're going to actually go and build our KPI Matrix in Power BI.